Jason trade in. I don't have to do
All right,
anything.
Jason, before we get to the Cavs stuff, did we miss any of the toughest athletes in Cleveland history?
Oh man, I wasn't listening. Who'd you get? Who'd you name?
All right. Well, I think we got them all, but I just wanted to ask you about that. Who's the toughest athlete that you can name in Cleveland history?
Toughest athlete I can name in Cleveland history. Man, I'm sure there's some Browns players from back in the day that I'm not.
Yeah, I went with Jim Brown. I threw Peyton Hillis on the list. Dude was so tough he had to swim for 20 minutes.
How we miss Albert Bell and Eddie Murray?
Because the question was 2000 and on, and then we went back.
I missed that part of it.
Yeah.
But,
2000?
I had Joe Thomas was my 1-1 pick
yeah.
here.
Albert Bell was definitely tough. All right, what's your headline from Koby's postmortem?
This team's coming back, and that's not a surprise. Like when they made the trade for DeAndre, it's sort of the die was cast then on what this team is going to look like for the next couple of years, just because where they're at with the apron rules and with everything else, this is who they are. And, I wrote after the season, I don't know how you can bring Jared back. I still kind of stand by that, but I get the position that they're in and why they feel like they have to run it back. And Koby, I thought he handled it well. I all things considered, he said, we got to get mentally tougher. And I asked him if mental toughness relates at all to playing through injuries. And he's pointed out that all 4 teams still alive are totally healthy. And they have all their rotational players. And obviously the Cavs were not in that position. But he said Darius needs to get physically stronger. And I thought that was an important note to make. And he said, they had all the offensive numbers and metrics where they wanted more possessions than the Pacers, and they did that. Where they lost it was in the shooting. They just didn't shoot it well, which is obviously pretty important. And he talked about mental toughness in terms of getting the offensive rebound at the foul line, getting the ball over half court, getting the inbounds pass. He said game 2, wrecked them. And game 2 is going to be something that's going to be hard for them they're going to have to live with that for a while. It's going to be hard for them to get over. And he referenced game 2 a couple of different times of really a turning point in the series. And he's right. We mentioned it's totally different if you're going 1-1 back to Indy, and really coming back here 2-2 is totally different after that horrendous game 4. So nothing terribly surprising that he said, other than, he believes in this core. He loves the core. He loves what they've built. And he wants to run it back again and see what they can do next year.
Did Koby say anything about coaching and teaching toughness and mental toughness and how you go about that? It's one thing to say we have to get mentally tougher, but did he dive into any of the specifics on how he plans on that? I
think it's just more like having to deal with the fallout of this, and never wanting to experience this again, and having to listen to everything that's been said and written and will be said and written. And he said, it's on us to change the narrative. We have to change that. And, I don't expect you guys to defend us. We have to learn from this and get better. And sort of, it's what I said on the show before, Donovan is obsessed and consumed with winning. Now, how do you get the rest of them there? Well, this probably helps to get them there and get them across the line. And so, he wants to see this through. He talked about Dan's patience, which I don't think anyone has ever mentioned Dan's patience before. It's always his checkbook. No one has ever talked about Dan in a patient way. But, he said the Gilbert family is seeing this through, and they want to see this through, and they want to see where this can go. And he referenced, he's mentioned this before, but he mentioned Boston was together 7 years before they won the championship. He said the Thunder had the tough loss in the semifinals last year after a great year. And then they come back this year and they break through and they get through and they move on to the conference finals after a 7-game series with Denver. And they kept the core intact, which is true. But also, Oklahoma City traded Josh Giddey and brought in Alex Caruso. And the Celtics traded Marcus Smart and brought in Alex Porzingis. So while they do keep the core moderately intact, both of those teams did make some pretty crucial changes before they broke through.
Jason, at the end of the year, we listened to Kenny talking, and Kenny says, he admitted we got to get stronger. We felt like the Pacers were physically able to play at a certain level. McNuggets mentioned this during the show. A lot of those games, they weren't, you know, they were resting their guys. They weren't really playing them deep into games. Do you think the tone of camp, the tone of their workout regimen will change a little bit now in terms of making sure that their minutes are restricted? Or do you feel like they're going to say, hey, Darius, Jared, I need y'all to come back 15 pounds heavier, hit these weights, and we're going to play guys more during the regular season? Or do you think they'll still do minutes management?
I think that they're pleased with how the regular season went. He said that they have conquered the regular season. You know, the 50-win season in there, 50-whatever-win season in there, 64-win season in there. Now they have to figure out how to win those next 16 after that. And there is a difference. But in terms of how they manage the regular season, I think they're happy with how they manage the regular season, because Darius played a career high in games. He played in 71 games. Jarrett played in 82 games, and the goal was to be healthy going into the playoffs, and they were. So they feel like they accomplished that. It was just he didn't use injuries as an excuse, but he did reference a couple times that they weren't right, they weren't whole. Darius was playing on 9 toes, blah 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 blah. So the injuries sort of struck him at the worst possible time, and that's when he said again that, you know, the 4 teams that are standing, all of their rotational guys are healthy, and he thinks that matters. And so how do you figure that out? And is it something to figure out, or is it luck? I don't know. Is there something they could do differently from a training and performance standpoint? You know, I do get why how they handled the regular season the way that they did. And we didn't, you know, no one complained about it then. In fact, we praised them for it, that, hey, look, Boston's coming up, they're undefeated, and they're still sitting Donovan because they're sticking to their plan, and look how impressive that is. So I can't come back and knock them for it now.
No,
because
Jay, don't we have, but now there is a season of both regular season and postseason where we can, because you're right, in the moment it seemed like logical. It seems like, well, yeah, the best thing to do is to manage their minutes. But when you look at the Knicks, all of their starters averaged 35, 36 minutes.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we touched on here was, and this is a mind-blowing stat, and I hope, my question to you is ultimately going to be, did Koby address that? You shoot the ball better than any team in the NBA during the regular season on wide-open three-pointers. Not only would the rate that you shot the ball in the playoffs have finished dead last, it would have been dead last by 8 percentage points.
Yeah.
I asked Mike, why? What happened? The same wide open shots. He said, your legs are tired. The reason I say all that is to say this. If your legs are tired, if you're running for a marathon, which we talked about at the beginning of the show, so it's a little timely. If you're training for a marathon, you have to be ready to run 26 miles on race day. That doesn't mean that you run 26 miles every day leading up to it, but if all of a sudden you're needing to run, and I'll use miles instead of minutes, if you need to run 38 or 40 miles and you've only run 28 or 30 miles, those extra 10 miles, that's an area that you haven't gone, and you're doing it night after night after night. Did he explain how they went from the best three-point shooting team on open threes to what would have been the worst by 8 percentage points in the playoffs? What happened?
No, I mean, that specifically didn't come up in terms of the shooting performance in the final series against the Pacers. When you talk about Tibbs, I like Tibbs. I think Tibbs is a really good NBA coach, and it's easy to point to now and say, well, look, New York did it right. They're in the conference finals. Where have the Knicks been the last 30 years?
No. It's not that they did it right. It worked.
The year before and the year before.
Well, last year against Indiana, the Knicks broke down. That's how Indiana made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They literally beat the Knicks, and the Knicks had, I think, 3 injuries to their top 6 guys against Indy last year. I mean, I'm just pointing out, it worked this year, but.
Yeah, it's easy to look at the Knicks and say, well, they did it right and the Cavs did it wrong. I don't know if it's necessarily that simple or not. To me, it's more of a being able to – this is just me. This isn't Koby. This is just me talking. It's being able to play through injuries, because every team's going to be hurt. Like Jalen Brunson's banged up, so you could say that the Knicks are whole and they're not missing any rotational pieces, but they're not missing any rotational pieces because Brunson's just playing through it. And so that,
same with
to
Halliburton.
Me, great point. Same with Halliburton. So that's what, and that's why I asked Koby, when you talk about mental toughness, how does that relate to playing through injuries? And because that's it, to me, it's the mindset of I don't know if you guys talked about it or not, but that 11-minute clip from Road Tripping of Perk, Channing Frye, and Richard Jefferson
God.
was unbelievable. And I mean, that's Cavs royalty, basically, when you talk about RJ and Channing, and to a lesser extent Perk. But one thing all three of those dudes have in common is championships.
Yep.
They've all won. And so they know what it takes to get there more than anybody else on this current roster, aside from Tristan. Tristan knows. But so when they talk, it's time to stand up and listen. So that's where I go with it. And he didn't really want to, I don't think he really wanted to equate what I was asking, mental toughness, to necessarily playing through injuries. But he did say Darius has to get stronger. He physically has to get stronger. And he's right. He does. He dismissed the idea of the small backcourt. He said, we can put that to rest. They can play together just fine. They're two all-stars back there. They both made the all-star team. And he's right. But Darius does have to bulk up and get stronger. He does have to do, like if you have one of those three guys, it's easy to say, well, they didn't have any of their guys in game 2 and they still almost won. Okay, well, they didn't win. But if they had one of those three, is that last minute different? Can they get the ball in bounds if one of those three dudes is on the floor? If Darius is out there, can they get the ball across half court? It's those little things, and then it's a totally different series. So that's where I would go with it. And, hey, listen, take nothing away from the Knicks. They're having a great year. But I would caution saying, well, look at the way Tibbs is doing it. He's doing it right. Because certainly no one, and maybe they would go on and win it all, but no one. This is their first time getting to this level in quite some time.
I just think maybe I don't know if they'll probably feel it because they say we're going to kill them for it, but it's difficult for fans to get. I mean, we're not even in the conference championship, right?
Yep.
You lose to the Knicks and it was 4-1. It wasn't close. You lose to the Celtics. It was 4-1. Wasn't close. You got beat in this series to the Pacers. It was not close. So it's tough for fans to say, well, how all of a sudden are we going to believe that next year with the same roster that Jared Allen just, it's going to click for me and I'm going to be a dog. Nah, Channing Frye, and they talked about that. And I believe, they have to have some deep soul searching. Or, to me, Evan Mobley is going to have to be Kevin Garnett or something. Or he's going to turn into that.
Well, that's it, G. And I probably should have mentioned this sooner. But that was a couple different points. Koby sort of referenced Evan taking another step and how this franchise is depending on internal growth. And when he says that, he's talking about Evan. And I would go, how many times I say on the show, I thought when we get to the end of the playoffs, we're going to look back and say Evan's the most important piece. Well, that wasn't the case. It was still Donovan. I think next year that has to be the case for this team to get to the levels to break through this hurdle. I mean, how many years have we tried it now? Has Donovan tried it to be the lead dog on a team?
8 years.
8 years now? 8 years.
Yep. Hasn't made a conference
After 8
final.
years, I think we have our answer. So it's time for a new formula. And if you're not going to break it up, then the new formula to me is Evan continuing on that trajectory that Mike and I have been saying all along we believe he's capable of doing. He's got to get there. And Kobe sort of challenged, hey, the 13 shots, which I think was in reference to game 1, Donovan took 30, Ty took 20, and Evan had 13, that, Evan, you got to take more shots than that. And he acknowledged there was a question about, do you need another ball handler? And he acknowledged, hey, maybe the answer is we got to put the ball in Evan's hands more often. So I think that they are very much looking at this as Evan, the trajectory of Evan determining the fate of this franchise. And if he continues to grow, and obviously he had a breakthrough, I think we can all agree he had a breakthrough this year, but that's still not good enough to where they ultimately want to go. He has to have yet another, and I believe it's in there. There's another level or two to him that he's going to have to get to really by next year, because, we've talked about it at length. We'll talk about it all summer. But the rules changed. It used to be as long as your owner was willing to write checks, you could keep a group together as long as you want. And that's just not the reality that we live in anymore. And the reality is this team has probably 2 years left as it's currently constructed to win. And then they're going to have to start breaking off pieces, whether we want them to or not. That's just the reality of the situation that they're in. They're probably going to have to make significant changes in 2 more years. So the clock's ticking. He's got 2 years to get this done.
The 13 field goals is in reference to the whole series. Didn't take more than 13 field goals in any game against Indiana, which is unacceptable. Jason, real quick, you got 1 minute to answer this, but did Kobe mention the rest of the Eastern Conference and the uncertainty with Tatum and Giannis and just the wide openness of the East playing any factor into what they'll do moving forward?
Yeah, It didn't really come up. That's bad job out of me. I should have asked about that. It was really essentially focused to the Cavs. Someone at the end asked him about the Pacers in the next series. He's like, it's going to be hard for me to watch that, obviously under the circumstances. But the East is wide open. I don't think we need him to tell us that. Let's see how the rest of this series plays out and these playoffs play out. But I do think there's a decent chance Giannis goes, and the Boston is going to break up. So it's there for them, and I think that's part of the reason why he wants to keep this thing together and see it through.
Yeah, you mentioned when you say it, the Pacers, Knicks, and Celtics, the three teams that have knocked the Cavs off in the last 3 years. They're losing to quality teams. All these teams have made conference finals now. It's their turn. And I agree with what he said about Evan Mobley. He's got to take another level. But I also think that you're putting too much of the focus on Evan Mobley. Of all of the players from 2 seasons ago to last season, Evan Mobley made the biggest jump. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award. It's fine to call him out and say you got to find another level. But where's Jared Allen's jump to the next level? Darius Garland on the physicality part, he can make a jump. It can't just be all, okay, Evan, get better again.
No, I hear you, and you're right. And he did say Darius has got to get physically stronger. Jared, I think Jared is what he is. I don't think anyone is expecting some big leap out of Jared. How many years has he been in the league now? You know what he is. He's consistent to a point, and that's who he is. The Evan piece is only because, I just think if anyone has a chance to break through to top 5 player in the NBA, I think it's Evan Mobley. And I think they see it that way as well.
That's fair. All right, Jay, great job. We got to run. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, see you guys.
All right. Nothing surprised me. Of course, they're going to bring him back. They can't. They don't have a move to make.
We're going to do an Ultimate Cav show tomorrow morning to dive into some deeper stuff because Jason's not on until Thursday.
Excellent.